Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where cinematic universes continue to be coveted by all the Hollywood studios. However, interestingly enough, only Marvel has been able to successfully build one. I think Fox had a little bit of a breakthrough with Deadpool, and of course, Warner Brothers is trying to do something with Harry Potter, and of course, the expansion of the wizarding world. I wonder if the Lord of the Rings kind of counts. I don't think so because there were no spin-off movies, right? There was just the original trilogy and then the prequels. But anyway, what we're going to discuss today is that Paramount is trying to build their Hasbro Cinematic Universe. And that, of course, entails Transformers and G.I. Joe, but also other Hasbro properties like Micronauts that they have yet to make into a movie. So they're going about it by creating a writer's room, right? They're like, we're going to, the running gag, of course, I think forever immortalized by 30 Rock was that Transformers is written by no one, right? So I think it's pretty interesting that as they move forward with trying to expand that franchise, which, by the way, very successful. The last two Transformers movies made over $1 billion, largely from overseas sales. But hey, however you get there, you get there. But I think they maybe want to repair some of the damage that's been done to the brand's reputation, I guess you could say. So they have this writer's room that they've assembled, and it's just added a bunch of new members. Now, we know that it's already going to be headed up by Akiva Goldsman, who has such a weird track record in Hollywood. I mean, this is an Oscar winner for A Beautiful Mind, yet he writes clunker after clunker after clunker, particularly when he's in charge. And by that I mean he's directing and or producing. When he's just screenwriting for someone else, things tend to go a little bit better for him. I think he produces on some of those as well, so let's just say when he's directing. But he wrote, for instance, I Am Legend. While some people don't have a lot of respect for that movie, it was also very successful and is one of Will Smith's many successes. Box office hits. So I'm surprised anyone would pick him to head up anything. But as is so often the case in Hollywood, when you wonder why someone continues to work, it means one of two things, or maybe both things. One is that they're very personable, and everyone in Hollywood just likes them. Like, for instance, Bill Paxton. I got the chance to meet him at Comic-Con, and, Bill Paxton, great actor, but, he gets consistently cast in supporting roles. And once I met Bill Paxton, I understood why, because he's just, the awesomest person ever. You're like, you know what? I just want to have Bill Paxton around. Let's just find a role for him so we can have him on set. He's really that nice and that cool. A really cool guy. So Akiva Goldsman must be awesome to hang out with, right? And then also, sometimes people are just good in a room, right? They're like, oh, I can point to my Oscar. Maybe he brings it to his meetings and plunks it down on the table. I Am Legend. And so people go, hey, you know what? I'm gonna gamble that this will be one of Akiva Goldsman's hits and not one of his flops. So anyway, he's really assembled an interesting team here. And I have to say, there is something very positive to say about it because the diversity of the team is impressive, to the point where you wonder if maybe because of the diversity in the writer's room, you might see that reflected in the movies in a meaningful way, not like tokenism, that you see characters, female characters and, characters of different ethnicity having genuine roles and being real dimensional characters. So anyway, his top writers that they've underneath Akiva Goldsman are Michael Chabon. That's, of course, a very popular novelist, but he's moving slowly into Hollywood. He wrote Spider-Man 2 and also worked on John Carter. John Carter, very good movie. Again, if you haven't seen John Carter, it's really a shame that it didn't do better because it's quite good. And so you should definitely check it out. And, at least it's definitely worth streaming. Then Brian K. Vaughan. Brian K. Vaughan is an interesting case because Brian K. Vaughan is one of the most talented comic book writers that there is. Y the Last Man, Saga, currently I'd say the most praised comic book being published right now is Brian K. Vaughan's Saga. So he's tried to move into movies and television with really mixed results. So it's weird that he's been unable to, considering how successful and how respected he is in the comic book medium, it's weird that he hasn't been able to achieve anywhere close to that in different mediums. And I think, if anything, that underscores how different it is to work in different mediums, right? That the transition isn't so easy. And then also Nicole Perlman from Marvel has joined as well to one of the top writers. But there are two other women on the list, and also Cheo Coker, who's the showrunner on Luke Cage. So that's a really nice list of people. So I hope that, we see some of that reflected. G.I. Joe, by the way, to be fair, has always been a very diverse cast. And I liked G.I. Joe Retaliation quite a bit. Another great streaming movie. So I'm curious, does this new talent on board make you have maybe not respect for the Hasbro movies, but maybe pique your interest again, maybe warrant a second or third or fourth look from you? I'm just curious as to your thoughts on it. All right, so that's the first story of the day. Now, the second story of the day is that Robert Downey Jr., he's making the rounds to promote Captain America Civil War, and being like a really the good cocky businessman that he is, and also being asked genuinely about these other projects, he's talking about what else is going on for him forward. He's not making any Iron Mans, as we discussed yesterday, and it was just revealed that he's going to appear in Spider-Man Homecoming. We'll see the size of the role, but from the reporting, it seems to be somewhat sizable, at least supporting. I wouldn't put it a cameo, but we'll see. And also, I think he wants to stay relevant in the MCU, and because he's not making any more solo movies, this is his tactic. But he also wants to make another Sherlock Holmes movie, and that's the story we're going to discuss today. He said that he and Guy Ritchie both want to return, and that he would like to shoot it sooner rather than later. Now, I can understand why he'd want to continue with this franchise, because it's the only thing that's really worked for him outside of his Marvel films as of late. Everything else kind of crashed and burned. So, I think he doesn't want to be too reliant on Marvel. Marvel pays him very nicely. Marvel employs him very nicely. But you never want to put all your eggs in one basket. So I can understand why he wants to keep Sherlock Holmes going. And I think he's a good Sherlock Holmes. And I think Jude Law is a wonderful Watson. And it's amazing that franchise has been able to coexist with what's going on with Benedict Cumberbatch and Martin Freeman over on the BBC, because that Sherlock show is just so spectacular. So the two wonderful Sherlocks can coexist at the same time, just shows how good both are, although I do believe that the BBC one is far superior, although it got a little bit too inside its own head with their recent movie. But I think that if they're going to continue with the Sherlock Holmes RDJ Guy Ritchie franchise, there's some clear fixes need to be made, because the only good thing really about it, in my opinion, is some of the stylish aspects that Guy Ritchie brings to the table, RDJ's performance and Jude Law's performance. I think the mysteries are very poor. That's what been one of my chief complaints about the Sherlock Holmes movies, is that you can't solve the mystery along with Sherlock Holmes. You're supposed to be able to do that. That's part of the fun of a mystery, any mystery. And always with these movies, you're like, okay, just tell me how you figured it out, because you didn't even give me the ability to figure it out, because it's not in the... I just think that, speaking of writers, like we did for the first story, they need a really good mystery writer to sign on for a third Sherlock Holmes. I'd also work on their villains. They wasted a really good opportunity with Jared Harris as Moriarty. Also he has to compete with Andrew Scott's Moriarty, so good luck. But also, I think the female characters have been so poor. Rachel McAdams, Noomi Rapace, just has not worked out. So I'm curious, what do you think of the Sherlock Holmes franchise? Do you want to see more Sherlock Holmes movies? And if so, what would you hope they change for the third entry? All right, so the third story of the day involves three female comedians who have just signed on for what I think could be potentially a pretty big movie, but I think it also speaks to some of the things that are holding back female comedians in Hollywood, right? So what's the deal? Well, Emma Stone, Kate McKinnon, and Jillian Bell are making a comedy together called Women in Business, and it's actually from Gloria Sanchez, which is Adam McKay and Will Ferrell's offshoot of their Gary Sanchez productions, and it's really made to compete with Judd Apatow's success with female comedians. Judd Apatow has a nice little side business going there with female comedians, Lena Dunham, Amy Schumer, etc. And so Will Ferrell and Adam McKay were like, why don't we do that? And this is a pretty good win for them. However, when you hear the term women in business, you think, oh, is this going to be a really great comedy about women in business? Well, actually, it just seems like Unfinished Business, like the female version. The recent Vince Vaughn business trip movie, which I actually streamed. It was okay, but it was like really, like middle of the road stuff. It had one good gag about a German hotel room, which I really appreciated. But this is just the same thing. We don't know who's who, but the setup is that two women go on a business trip, I think, to another foreign country, I believe, and they get an intern on Craigslist to help them out, and she turns out to be crazy. So I'm not so crazy about that setup, but we'll see. Of course, I love everybody involved in this, so I'd want to see a trailer, right? But what I want to talk about is that I think that these these like separate comedies, like, oh, this is a guy comedy and this is a female comedy. I think I'd like to see more mixed casts. I think that's what so many people liked about Spy. I think that's what people wanted to see with Ghostbusters. That would have like solved all of Ghostbusters' problems if it had just had a mixed cast. Emma Stone, by the way, turned down a role in Ghostbusters, which I'm sure she's thankful for now. But maybe, I think to some degree, maybe this is her trying to correct that, being like, I'm missing the female comedy boat. I got to get in there. Because Emma Stone, by the way, before she became like really interested in being like the sexy Gwen Stacy and Andrew Garfield's girlfriend, she was really funny. And it was sad to see her comedy career derailed by the Spider-Man movies, which she was good in, but also, her like misstep with Aloha, right? Like, I think that Emma Stone should focus on being the really funny redhead that everyone fell in love with originally, that gave her all the opportunities that she ended up with eventually. So anyway, but this is just another all-female comedy, and I think movies like the upcoming Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates are just a much better choice. Everybody wants to see everybody having fun together, and I just, I think that they should try, and that should be the ideal situation. Because, just same problem I had with Girl on the Train trailer. You're like, why are all these women solving their own problems by themselves? It's like some kind of weird sub-universe, right? I mean, I think we don't exist separately, so why should our movies be separate? So that's what I think is the next step that female comedians need to take for this craze to become a permanent situation, that women are funny and successful comedians. All right, so those are the three stories of the day. Now, the viewer question comes from Dion M., who follows up to something that I discussed yesterday. So let me just read Dion's question, because Dion covers it very well. So Dion says, "Hi, Grace. Question. You said you feel that Warner Brothers should just cancel the Jungle Book because of Disney's Jungle Book." I was talking about Andy Serkis' situation. So Dion continues saying, "I don't know how I feel about that. I enjoyed Disney's film very much, but I don't feel it was phenomenal. LOL." I think as Dion realizes that I think Dion is a guy. I'm sorry, Dion, if I'm getting this wrong. But I think Dion feels he's in the minority there because the film is so lauded and so many people enjoyed it. Although, in your defense, Dion, I have heard a few people say it just didn't quite do it for them. So totally valid. So Dion says, but anyways, and I don't know if that's a big enough audience for Serkis to feel he can tap into, right? Like, it's so small. But anyway, Dion says, but anyways, if Warner Brothers, also, by the way, if the Jungle Book does well during awards season, and I think that it might, and some of you have also tweeted me the same thing, that's really going to kill Andy Serkis' chances with his Jungle Book. And maybe Warner Brothers is waiting to see if that happens. But anyway, Dion continues saying, if Warner Brothers were to cancel the film with everyone signed and a script in place, what would happen? I guess what I'm saying is, what would a studio do in that situation? Do they already pay people who have been brought onto a project? Or is it once a project begins? I hope I didn't confuse you. Thanks. No, I think that's a great question, Dion, and that's why I picked it to answer today, because it is a confusing situation potentially, and I just want to explain it. So in Hollywood, I do believe that most of the time there are deals, a contract can be terminated, except for one situation, and that's when you have a pay or play deal. A pay or play deal, play or pay. Play or pay deal means either you play the role, or you do the job, or you get paid. So the deals, the exchange of money is going to happen no matter what. And those are very rare. That's usually for like a big star. Those are the only people who would get that. And there's really no, especially not for voice talent. So there's really no big star attached here. Maybe Andy Serkis, because my suggestion wasn't they just say, okay, we're not making the Jungle Book, everybody go home. I would actually keep the entire cast, and I would keep Andy Serkis intact, and I would just say, you just need to get a new script. And that scriptwriter, by the way, has already been paid. And that's just the breaks, I also think that as hard as everyone I'm sure has worked on Andy Serkis' The Jungle Book, nobody wants to keep going with something that's going to potentially be a failure, right? Like, why pour more effort and money into something that's looking less and less likely like it's going to hit its target, right? Nobody wants to be associated with that. And I think that most of the people I would guess who signed on for voice talent did it to support Serkis in his directorial debut. So if they're there to support Serkis, they should just want to support him in no matter what story he tells, right? So I would keep everybody attached, maybe even say to the screenwriter, hey, you can write the new screenplay, right? Because it would cost more money to make the movie, so just spend a little bit more money to pay the screenwriter again, and then say, hey, to everybody who's going to work on this, you're going to get paid to play a different role. So that's a special situation, but I would just keep everything intact, and I would just change the movie they're going to work on, right? I mean, this thing's already been pushed back to 2018 already. It's just like, come on, go make a different movie. So in that situation, that's what would happen. But sometimes deals just fall apart in Hollywood. Hollywood, and that's always built into the contract. Except, as I said, in a play or pay deal. That's the only time that someone would get paid even if the film didn't move forward. And those are rare. Those are only for really big names, and they're often done to make sure you sign that big name. Like, I'll offer you a play or pay deal. And they go, okay, well, that means I'm getting $20 million no matter what. Let's do it. So I hope that answers your question, Dion, not only in terms of payment, but also, what I exactly meant by saying they should move on from the Jungle Book. All right, thank you everybody for tuning in. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Please write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories, Dion's viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered on Monday, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.